It's Sandy Blooms, and today we have Jesse Lee Peterson with us. He is someone who is very much concerned with the way society is going today. I know if you had a chance to look him up and kind of watch his podcast and see more about what he speaks about and less about what others say about him. So, Jesse Lee Peterson, I do appreciate you for coming on our show today. How are you
Thanks
doing
for
today?
having me. All is well. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. When you say all is well, I assume you're saying I'm still breathing, I'm still alive, so I'm grateful to be here.
No, what I'm saying is that life is amazing and
Amazing.
that, yeah, and that all is well. When you really love what's right with all your heart, soul, and might, you can't go wrong that way. Life works
Absolutely.
naturally for you.
Now you're someone who speaks about God a lot, right? Are you a
Yes,
pastor? You're a pastor,
I am.
correct?
Yes, absolutely.
So I want to know, what does God mean to you? Because we're coming into an age where we're getting further away from biblical standpoints and principles. And I'm just wondering, as a pastor, what does God mean to you?
Well, God is love. He is the light. Um, he is everything we need. He's love. He's the light. He's the way. He's just everything.
And when you say he's
And you,
love, he's the light, what do you mean
yeah,
by he is love?
in him there is no anger, and anyone who has anger has hatred in their heart, and they are playing God. And as a result, their lives are not well at all. They are depressed. They have anxiety. They worry. They're jealous. They're envious. They have strife, suicidal thoughts, loneliness. Um, they're revengeful. But when you repent of all that, God, by forgiving your parents first, right, realizing you're wrong to have anger, because anyone who has anger is of their father, the devil. Satan is their daddy. Even if they go to church or read the Bible, hoop and holler, quote scripture, Satan is still their daddy because of the heart. Salvation is of the heart. And so when you realize that you're wrong for playing God, for having anger, he will, when you go and forgive, he will forgive you, and he will take away the spirit of Satan, the darkness from the heart, and he will give you his heart, which is light, which is love. And that's what guides you through the rest of life.
Now
But
there are so many different religions right now. Is there a way that to truly know which God you're serving? Like I know
yes,
people are confused. We have, Christians, Islam, we have Catholics, we have Jews, and everyone feels like they're right. They feel like this is the right thing. So
yeah.
what are your thoughts about that?
And you're right. When people get involved with religion, they tend to try to own it. They think it's theirs, and so they put on a false ownership of religion. And if you don't go along with their religion, they judge you and say that you're wrong. My God is better. My God is this. My God is that. But when you don't identify with it as owning it, then you'll be guided by what is right, and you will see from within that uh, the true God is not about all these different religions. God is a spirit, and we must walk in the spirit. And walking in the spirit means that you have to live in the present where God is, because of this anything. There's no such thing as future or past, right? And so when you fight over religion, you're fighting over something, the future or the past, or you something that you're trying to own. And we don't own anything. We're not in control of anything. We are a gift from God. Our bodies are a gift. And so you can't fight over the spirit, but you can fight over religion. And there's only one true God. Once you're born again of him, you would know that. And that way you don't fight over anything. You let people believe what they want, do what they want. You can't make them see, because you realize you're not in control of anything, and you can't change anything. You don't own anything. So there's nothing to fight over.
No, absolutely. That makes sense. Now, I grew up Jehovah's Witness. And they were a little bit different, a little
Yeah.
bit stricter than most
Yeah,
of the Christians that I've met as I, got older. And one of the things that we did a lot was we shun people. Which means that if you're not baptized and you're not a member of our congregation, we wouldn't talk to you. Do you think that God likes that? Do you think that God wants us to not deal with people who aren't showing that love or displaying that love, or is it inevitable in today's world?
definitely not. God would not want you to act that way because God is the light of the world. And if he dwells in you, what's the purpose of having a light that you're just going to hide under a tree? And if you truly are of the light, you want to be out into the world that the world may see the light because there are a few people who are seeking the right way. And the light that shines in you, some of them will see that light and they will ask you, well, I noticed that there's something a little different about you. I noticed that you're not angry. I noticed that you don't judge. And you'll be able to point them back to God. But if you're hiding the light under the tree, then the light is no good. It serves no purpose. And if you notice, when God sent Christ, Christ went amongst out into the world. He went amongst the sick and the lonely ones and the diseased one and the lost ones and everything because he brought the light into the world for all of those who would want to return to God. So it's not right. It's not good to hide the light under the tree. It should shine in the world.
No, that makes sense. Now, what are your thoughts about people who say, "I am God"? Now, lately there's been this there's been this new age or new era, and people saying we're moving into the Capricorn light and the moon, and I am a God because I can create. What do you think about that?
And I've heard that too. People have said that to me as well that they are God. I have no idea what they're talking about. It sounds like they're lost in the darkness of their imagination. Because the one thing I know that all thoughts are all lies, except for practical thoughts, right? All thoughts are all lies all the time about anything. And Satan will tell you whatever you need to believe. He will tell you that. And if you believe in thought, which is the imagination, you will believe the lies from the imagination. That's why God said, bring all thoughts into captivity. And so when you have anger, you're not able to see and you think the things that you're hearing in the imagination sound like you or it sound like God, your image of God, right? You think they're from God and they're not.
Absolutely. Where do
I
thoughts
know
come from? I noticed you mentioned thoughts. You said your
thoughts
thoughts. Where do they
thoughts
come from?
from your daddy, the devil. Thoughts are totally from Satan. And that's why they're so deceiving. They can make you feel good. You can read the Bible, the scriptures, and Satan will interpret the scriptures for you, and you'll feel good. But then something can happen. Now you're feeling bad because Satan will give you what appears to be a good thought. Now you feel good about yourself. But then as soon as you high up here, he can give you a negative thought, and now you feel bad about yourself. So you're up and down emotions, and it can get to the point that you want to jump off a bridge after a while, right? But if you know and can see that all thoughts are all lies all the time, then you would just let them pass. You would not participate in them, and they will have to disappear because the light of God will destroy the imagination. The imagination is of the intellect, and there's nothing intelligent about the imagination. There's nothing intelligent about that at all. Intelligence is different. Intelligence accept nothing or reject nothing. It doesn't accept anything nor reject it. Whereas the intellect tends to accept and reject because it's of the devil.
Absolutely. That makes sense. I love the way that you explain things because it's almost like you're so certain and so true of it that your spirit receives it. Does that make sense to you? Do you know what your spirit receiving something means?
I do, absolutely. And that's why you can't hide the light under, you shouldn't hide the light under the tree because there are men and women out there that are looking for something. They're
Is
looking
that
for something. If you hide it under the tree, then when you, they won't have anything for their spirit to identify with to cause them to overcome.
Absolutely. Now, is that the reason why you speak freely? And wait, before you say what do you mean speak freely? I absolutely enjoy watching you and your shows, of course.
Thank you.
But one of the things I've noticed is that you don't bite your tongue. You actually remind me a lot of my father. I mean, growing up, he never bit his tongue, and
Yeah,
because of that, I didn't grow up. I did, even though he was Jehovah's Witness, I didn't grow up sensitive to things. I was always open to other people's ideals, even if they weren't something that I could agree with. But when you
absolutely.
speak and you say things, you don't care. It seems, wait a minute, I can't tell you about yourself, but I can say it seems that you don't care because you are strong within your reason to feel how you feel. So, is that the reason why you feel like that?
That's a good question. I don't, when I speak, I'm not thinking about if I care or don't care, right? Because what happened 33 years ago now, I asked God to, because I was emotional, I had anger, and I didn't understand how that happened to me. And so I asked God to let me see myself. And He allowed me to see that I resented my mother and who had tried to turn me away from my father. And and I didn't know that because I had emotional love, which emotional love is anger, is hate, it's not real love. And so I asked God to let me see that. And He allowed me to see that I resented my mother who resented my father. And so, like all mothers do, they turn the children away from the father because of their resentment of the father. And when I realized that, I'm like, I also saw that that anger I had was holding me back in life. I couldn't see my way clear. And so I realized that, and it was like a sadness that I resented my mother, didn't know it. And I went and forgave her. It was the hardest thing in the world I had to do, ever had to do, was to face my mother to say, I'm sorry for resenting you. And my mother seemed to be a nice woman. She was a Christian, nice woman, but she had this resentment toward my father, like most women do. And I said to her, you know what? I'm sorry that um, for resenting you, for trying to turn me away from my father, because I had the yearning for my father, my dad, right? I had the yearning for him. And it didn't matter what had happened with them. That was between them. It had nothing to do with me. And so I forgave her. When I forgave her, God forgave me, and my life changed. He changed my heart from anger to love.
Mm.
And so now when I speak, I just want those who are seeking the truth to really return to God by forgiving their mothers and grandmothers who may have raised them for turning them away from their fathers, and forgive their fathers for not protecting them from the mother, because the father didn't understand either. He had not overcome his mother. So you become attracted to what you hate. So they married their mothers or live with the woman become their mother. And so I just want people to know it's a spiritual battle. It's a warfare between good and evil, right versus wrong. And it has nothing to do with male or female, black or white, or any kind of color. It's spiritual. So when
That's
you
true.
go forgive, you're return to the spiritual father when you forgive your father and your mother. And
Now, I
so
do have a, I'm sorry,
that
I didn't mean to
that's
cut you
my
off.
concern. That's my concern.
I do have a question for you. Now,
Yes.
you said the fathers, you said the mothers turn the children away from the father. What
Yes.
if it's an instance where, because I was raised by my father, I
Right
didn't have
on.
my mother. My mother was a Guatemalan lady who was concerned with her life, and she didn't really care for all the children she had until one day she couldn't take life and she ended her own life. And
Amazing.
so and it's a little bit weird because especially, being a woman, and then, being a woman of minority descent, I've experienced life from a total different standpoint. So
Yes.
what would you say about, and I've heard your take on, women who grow up without their fathers, how they resent, how they end up searching sometimes their whole life to find that solidity in another man. And I
Yeah.
can't agree it because I have friends, and I've seen it. But like you said, when you search within yourself and you go on this spiritual battle of forgiveness before you can truly freely love like God urges us to do,
Yes.
how would you describe someone who didn't have a mother?
Well, In the good old days when boys were boys and men were men, if there was a divorce between a married couple, of course, the children would normally stay with the father because the father was, because of that order of God in Christ, Christ in man, man over woman, and woman over children, right?
Right.
They were stay with the father because as long as they love their earthly father, then they would love God. But if you take the children away from the father, you turn them away from the father. You cannot love God because how can you love God and hate your earthly father? Men represent God. They represent Christ. You know, they represent God. And when you hate the father, when you hate the son, you hate the father. Even though they may be weak men, they've been turned away, they still represent God. They've just been turned away from God. And so when you love your earthly father, then you can't help but love God and have peace. So maybe with you, because you raised by your father, you stayed with him, you kept close to him. That's what saved you from going through that spiritual trauma of looking for love and and ended up with the wrong kind of men and all that, thinking that they had to love. Um, because what women are really looking for is the love of a father. They're not looking for sex love. They're not looking for all the stuff that they think that they're looking for. And men are looking for the love of a father too. That's why when men and women get married, most of the marriages don't work because they come together with a fake love, that emotional stuff, which is evil. And when they get together, that goes away, and now they're fighting one another, trying to get the same high that they had before they got married. But if you were raised by your father and he was a pretty good, decent man, you love him, you'll be fine. And then you still shouldn't, as a kid, you still kind of want your mother. You wonder why wasn't she there? But just realize she couldn't help herself either. When people take their lives, it's only because they're listening to the devil. The devil tell them, you know what, you're a drug addict. You're not worth anything. You're this, you're that, and you believe it. And then Satan just tell you, oh, why live any longer? Life is bad. And you end up killing yourself listening to the devil. So you must forgive your mother for not being there because she couldn't help herself either. But you're very fortunate is in that you were raised by your father. Because what happens is, long story short, what happens when you return to the Father, God will renew your mind. He will give you the mindset of the father instead of the mindset of the mother, because the mindset of the mother is that of the devil.
Wow, that's deep. I had to take a second to process that because you just said a mouthful that is so, I mean, and it's so spiritual. I do a lot of outreach with younger girls,
Yeah,
and a lot of them, believe it or not, they've been abandoned, and sometimes by both parents. And I see that it's a lot of promiscuity,
yeah,
deceitfulness, and then just a whole bunch of turmoil mentally that some doctors would diagnose as being bipolar. So it's funny that you said that because to me, I always thought it was a spiritual warfare.
yeah,
Regardless of if they had their mother or their father growing up without, sometimes you perceive yourself, you know, when you're made in the image of someone, but then you don't know how to access yourself and that portion of you of what you admire from who you're made in the image of, that
yeah.
can become difficult, with your spirit. So I do believe that. Now there's a few things you said that I want to touch on. In the
Okay,
Bible, in the beginning of the Bible, in Genesis, my favorite part of the Bible, in Revelation, the beginning and the end, right? It said that God made Adam, but he also made Eve as
right.
her, as his companion.
Yeah,
Now, we know that in Eve sinned, and through Eve, that sin, death and sin spread throughout all of us, right?
right. Absolutely.
So, if Eve would have, let's say, denounced, if Adam would have denounced Eve when she, went against God's rules for the Garden of Eden, do you think he would have created another woman? Or do you think that potentially it would have been cause for something else? We would have still been in this situation. Reason being is because I noticed that you said, the man is the closest thing in representation to God, because the Bible says he put God as head of the congregation and head of the house. I mean, excuse me, he put Jesus as head of the congregation and as head of the house is the husband, right? So
Right.
in that situation, Adam went totally against, what we speak of today. And so I'm wondering, in the instance where Adam, his father was God, he had the closest, relationship with God. Would there have been a chance for us to still live without sin if God would have destroyed Eve? Or is that possible from your experience as a pastor?
Of course, I don't know what God would have done had just Eve listened to the serpent, right? But I do know that if Eve just if Eve listened to the serpent, but the man did not listen to the woman, we would be fine. And we would not have fallen away from God. And the only way that we were able to fall away from God is that Adam fell away from his father. And the order is Christ is over man. And when Christ speak of the church, he's not talking about a church building. Our bodies are the temple of God, right? And so he's really referring to our temple, the body, not a church building. The church
Okay.
building is just put there where we can get together, edify one another, correct one another. But the real church is the body, not the building. And
Okay.
then the husband is the head of the wife. He's not the head of the house. He's the head of the wife. And the wife runs the house. She makes sure the house is clean, food is there, the kids are watched over for the man. And so the man is the head of his wife, and the wife is the head of the children. But the love comes from God through Christ, through the man, through the woman to the children, not from below, because the love that comes from the woman is that of the devil. It's not real love. It's all ego. And that's why women are so selfish with that. It's all ego. If you don't cater to mama, she'll destroy you. If you don't let mama know, I appreciate what you did, you suffer for me, mama. Come and live with me. She'll destroy you. She'll build a wall against you and destroy you because the love that she has is not real love. It's evil. It's selfishness. It's all ego. But what happened was, long story short, when Eve listened to the serpent became her God.
Mm.
She can no longer listen to Adam, who listened to his father, right? And even though Adam had warned her, stay away from the serpents, don't listen to him, she did it eventually anyway. And so when she did that, she fell away from her husband. And then Adam was still pretty cool because he still listened to his father. But Eve is like, don't listen to your daddy. Be your own man. Your dad is being controlling you, right? And finally, Adam listened to the woman. And when he listened to the woman became his God.
Mm.
And that's why women rule over men right now, because the man still think that the woman is his God. And he
Mm.
think that because he resents his mother, and he's only attracted to the type of evil spirit that's in his mother. And so, but when he forgive his mother, he will overcome that and no longer be attracted to that. And so when he forgive his mother, the woman will no longer be the man's God. Then he can return to God. And he won't be afraid to be honest with his wife or any woman, really, bring her out of the hell that she's in, to show her how to overcome the hell she's in by forgiving her mother. Because you notice women, they act just like their mothers, and they don't want to be like their mothers. They don't want to be emotional. They don't want to be angry. They don't want to take things all personal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Be
I do.
so sensitive. But because they have not forgiven their mothers, they're just like their mothers. And the cycle repeats itself generation after generation until finally a woman realized, you know what? I need to forgive my mother. My mother turned me away from my father. She imposed her will on me, and she played victim, and she's not the victim. And I realized she can't help it. And then God will forgive her, and she can return to God too. But it's not going to happen until you forgive. God said, in order to enter into the kingdom of heaven, you must forgive. Because anyone with anger has the heart of Satan, and the light and the darkness does not match. So you can't get into the heaven within with anger on your heart. You must forgive your mothers.
So can I ask you, when you say that women are like full of emotion and just up and down, you're right. And well, reason I'm saying in statistics,
Yeah.
when I deal with patients who are males, and I'm kind of using the terminology based off of old biological teachings and not
Yeah.
this new system that they, the pronouns that they're using, but with
Okay.
male, the male counterpart with testosterone, you
Right.
know, um, they they express things a little bit differently. They're able to usually tell you what their problems are.
Yes.
If you sit down with them, they'll say, "It's this, this, and this. I just don't know how to deal with it." With
Right.
women, it takes usually about 3 to 4 sessions to actually get out the core to the core of the problem, and that's not
Right.
even tackling, how do we resolve this, how do we help you so that you can actually, you know function, because that's all it is about becoming manageable, because we all
Yeah.
have emotions and things we're dealing with. So when you say, women are angry, and they're, but it's not all women, do you think it's all women, or?
Well, it's all women and all men because everyone who born through the woman is born into sin.
Wow.
Everyone, every human
Wow.
being around the world, and they have
Hold
the
on, can we
same
just take a
problem.
second real quick? I'm sorry, Jesse Lee
Yeah.
Peterson. I gotta say your
No
whole
problem.
name because I like that. But can we just take a second? Because you just said something so deep. Can you repeat yourself again? You said because we're all born through woman. So we're
Yes.
all born into sin. So it's inevitable.
That's right. Every woman, every person who is born of the woman born of sin. That's why God said that we must be born again of the spirit, which is his spirit, because the spirit that comes through the woman is that of the devil. And so we're born into families where the fathers and mothers are fighting one another. They are angry and they are emotional. And especially with the mother, she imposed that on the children, which caused you to become angry. And the moment you become angry, you're now rebuilt in her image, which is the image of the devil. And so that's why all who are born of the Spirit of God overcome the image of the devil, and now they take on the image of God. They take on the image of light
Do
and
you mean
love,
through baptism, or is it just the acceptance of God
the
that
acceptance
will
of
purify
God.
them?
Yeah, to realize that you're wrong for being angry and you go and forgive, then you take on the spirit of God. And and, and you still could be baptized in water if you want, but once you forgive, you're born of the spirit of God, you're baptized in the spirit. Everything is spiritual now. It's not outwardly, it's inwardly. That's what the New Testament was all about. God gave us a new reality. He gave us a new world, right? And that world is the kingdom of heaven within us. And we must be born of the Spirit and baptized of the Spirit. And that's what happened when you're born of the Spirit.
Now, are
And
you married?
am I married? No, I'm not.
You're not. Why are
I
you?
ju-
Are you not married because of that reason? Why aren't you married?
well, I've been engaged twice over the years, and I I noticed that when I was dating, the woman's like really nice, and they pretend that they agree with you and they love you and they follow, right?
Mhm.
But as soon as you get engaged, they try to control you and own you. And so I was raised, I would never let anyone control me. It's just not, men don't do that. And men are individuals. They think for themselves. They don't join clubs and things like that. They're individuals, right? And so I would call it off because at the time I didn't believe in divorce. And so I would see before I got married that it would end in a divorce. I do have a son that unfortunately made out of wedlock, and he has two children, and the daughter got married, and now she has two sons. So I have two grandkids and two great grandkids.
Wow. So you were still
Amazing.
able to right, amazing. You were able to still carry on the Peterson legacy even
Yes.
though yeah, but see that's wonderful. Do you
Yeah.
think that your children are more blessed or less blessed because you weren't married when you conceived them?
It's best to be married and raise children because kids need a father and a mother. But if they have a father and a mother, but the father and mother are walking in darkness, they still going to end up screwed up anyway. Because if parents don't have real love, then they have no love. And all that fake stuff, emotion is not love. It comes from anger. And so the kids will still end up messed up. But if they are born into a family where the father and the mother are spiritually right, they return to God, then the kids will have a chance of, because they'll have a chance of being staying innocent. Kids are born innocent until they're born into this trauma that come from the parents.
Mm,
So if they don't have parents who have been returned to the Father, they still going to end up in darkness and have to
okay.
go through the same hell that a child will have to go through that's not married, that wasn't born with a father and a mother in a home.
Right, and it makes sense. And I know, there are a few things about that is because even though you weren't married, I feel like at this age and this stage in your life, and you said your son has children already and he's married and you have grandkids. So it's been a while. So you've had a chance to really sit back and I don't want to say learn from a mistake because he's not a mistake, but you had a chance to see what you would have done differently.
Yeah, my son went through exactly what I went through as far as the anger part,
Mhm.
because, and I had him for a while. He lived with me for a while here in California, and but his mother asked me to, oh, let him come and visit. She was married to some other guy. She wanted him to come visit. And I knew not to let him go because I knew that she would not send him back. But after a couple of years went by, she begged and begged. And so I said, all right, I'll let him go. And when I sent him there to visit, she wouldn't send him back. And I tried to get him, but you know how women, when they have anger, they would destroy the children before they would let the father see the children, because that's their hatred of the father. And so he became angry. He thought I didn't love him. He thought that I didn't care, even though I had gone there to try to see him and I had sent him money and things like that. And it wasn't until he was able to see that he was able to forgive and
Mm.
overcome. And so we're tight now. But he went through the same anger because his mother tried to turn him away from me as well.
I agree with you to a certain extent. I think that the woman may not be essentially trying to 100, some women may not be 100% essentially trying to turn the child on the father, but I think that it's a self-loathing kind of thing. Like when some people do it unintentionally, some women do it unintentionally. Like certain conversations I don't feel like you should have in front of children. Like if
Yeah,
if you are into it with your mate, your spouse, whatever, I don't think children, young ears should be able to try to conceive what you're talking about. It's not a
that's
place for
right.
a child. And there are some women who do it, but I don't think 100% of the time every woman is doing it out of a place of, oh, I hate your father. I think sometimes it's an unintentional loathing, meaning you hate yourself because when you don't know to me, in my perspective, when you don't know the root cause of why you feel a certain way, because see, you are speaking from an acknowledgeable perspective, meaning some women, some persons know why they feel like that, but they just don't care. But there are some people who really do not know why they're always angry, why they're always sad, why their emotions are flipping up and down. And we see it's a chemical imbalance. But there are certain things that happen if you're not diagnosed as an adolescent. There are certain things that happen that can cause you to have a chemical imbalance. And if you don't know, or if you're not aware of what's going on, then you'll participate sometimes in drugs, and like you said, and speaking bad about the father, but you don't know. So would you agree that it may be more of a self-loathing that some women have,
Well,
unintentional self-loathing?
I absolutely agree with you that some women don't realize what they're doing. They can't see and they don't realize what they're doing. That's why we must forgive, because when you have anger, you can't see. And wrong seem right and right seem wrong to you. You really don't know what you're doing. And so there are women like that. I meet them all the time. One of the things that we do at Bond, we have on the first Thursday night, we have men's forums for men only, when we get together and deal with these issues. And then on the third Thursday night for ladies only, and Sunday morning for everybody. But in those private meetings on Thursday night with the ladies, they admit, I didn't know I was doing that. I didn't realize what I was doing. And it wasn't until I heard you say, know thyself, go and forgive, that I realized that I was driven by this darkness and I had no idea what I was doing. Because there are women out there that want to overcome. They want, they don't want to be controlled by darkness. They do want to overcome, but no one ever talked to them about forgiveness, especially forgiving the mothers. They'll tell you, oh, you need to forgive your father, but they never mention the mother because the hell come through the mother. So if you don't forgive the mother, how will you be free, right? And
No,
so there are
absolutely.
women that don't know, and but there are those who they know they are living a life of hell, and they don't care about destroying the children, the husband, the cat, the dog, the paint on the house, and everything else. They would just destroy you because they love their hell that they live in. They love their misery. They don't want to change. And one point that you made about when you talk to men, uh, they know exactly what's wrong. They may not know how to overcome it, but they know what's wrong. And it takes more than one session or whatever to talk with women. And the reason for that is that the hardest thing in the hardest thing, there's none like it, for a woman to do is to admit that she's wrong. The hardest thing. If they can admit, even if they don't say it out loud to others, you don't need to be putting your business out there if you don't want to, right? But at least admit within yourself, you know what, I'm wrong. And the moment you can admit that you're wrong, the change starts to happen. But if you don't admit you're wrong, nothing, you're just going to get deeper into hell. So that's why it's harder for women than it is for men.
No, absolutely. Now you said that you have grandchildren, and this is a little bit of a question for you. You have grandchildren. Do you
Yeah.
think that it is your responsibility as a grandparent to help take care of your grandchildren?
No.
You don't.
Uh-uh.
You don't feel like because you created your son and he had children that it's not your responsibility because he wouldn't be here without you?
It's my son's responsibility to take care of his own children, and it was my responsibility to take care of my children. It's not the grandparents' responsibility. Now, if the grandparents want to help out in the right way, there's nothing wrong with it. But you should not be making babies relying on thinking or even relying on the fact that somebody else is going to take care of it. That's not the right mindset. You have to know that you're making these children and only you are responsible for them, not the schools, not the daycare center, not the grandparent, but you are responsible for your children.
No, and I get that. But there this new age, call it Generation X, feels like maybe it should be the responsibility of the grandparents to help because okay, reason being is, we had the crack era, the 80s, okay?
Yeah,
Then the boom.
yeah,
And from there, a lot of grandparents raised the children, raised children, their
right,
grandchildren. And so in doing that, we see that, it took extended family to actually care for our family. So we didn't go into the systems a lot of the times.
right.
Um, and so, this new generation, that's not so much so with the crack era. So, but there's still that fundamental, my parents should help me take care of my children because without them, my whole lineage would not be. But then in retrospect, there's the same ideologies from the parents. The older people feel like I raised you. So once I'm 70, 80, and I can't really help myself, it's the job of the children to take care of the parent. Would you disagree with that? The latter portion of the
I,
grandparent and the
I
parent?
totally disagree with that. And I know a lot of adults who are dealing with that and they're misery. They're in misery for having to be responsible for their mother or their father, most of the time the mother. They feel guilty. And the reason they feel guilty because the mother has put that guilt on them. I had you, I went through this for you, I fed you, I did this. And so the kids grow up feeling like they owe the same thing to them, but they don't. When your parents decided to make a baby, they didn't make a contract with you and said, you know what, we're about to make a baby here. And we want you to know we're making you because you're going to have to take care of us. You know what I mean? And that is wrong to put that on the children. The kids are not responsible for you. And it's not their fault that you didn't take care of your life in the right way and now you're old and you're in a bad situation. It's not the kid's fault that you did that to yourself, right? And it's wrong for putting that on them. And I promise you that if they had not put that on the kids, but raised them in the right way where they don't feel responsible like that, if the kids want to help, they'll naturally give back without the guilt. Because giving back, helping your parents out of guilt is not real love. You're doing it out of guilt. You're miserable doing it because it's not real love. You've been brainwashed to do that. And as far as uh, taking having children and expecting grandparents to raise them, the reason that the kids are on drugs as adults, the reason that they're on drugs and alcohol and in jail and gang members is because of their mothers, right? They hate their mothers. And so if you make some children and give them to your mother to raise them, you just continue in the same cycle because what the mother did to you, she's going to do it to your children. She's going to screw them up as well. You're responsible to overcome so that you can guide them in the right way instead of giving them over to grandma. She's going to screw them up.
No,
And you just
absolutely.
have another generation of that.
That makes sense. Now, and I want to kind of get off of that for a little bit because you had me so tickled I had to cough over. I tried to control it. But listen, when you say biblical standpoints and viewpoints, and it seems like your ideology does align with the Bible and the principles from it, whether I like it or not, whether I
Yeah.
accept what you said about the woman, there's a part of me that has to say, sit back with myself and say, ego aside, self, is this true? And I can say, even having my father, I can agree that sometimes I do get angry. Usually it's around a certain time of the month. But, there are times where I do get angry. I do get upset and I can't explain these feelings. And, it's not a psychological thing. It's a hormonal thing, with the period coming on. But I can say that those are spirits, like you said.
Yeah.
And the heart is treacherous. And the Bible says, who can know it, right? So, when we take all of that into consideration and we think about politics, I know at one point in time you said Trump was the great white hope. Do you still feel like that?
The great white hope.
I don't frankly have time for total political correctness, and this country doesn't have time either.
Amazing. The great white hope. Absolutely. What happened?
So, why do you feel like that?
I can't see you.
Why do you feel like Trump is the great white hope?
Huh? Oh, your camera's off. Oh, there you go. You said
Yes,
what
I'm sorry
now?
about that. I coughed so hard. It
Oh,
felt like I was having an asthma attack. So I had to disappear for a second to
oh, I
kind of
see.
take a
Okay,
sip of water.
I got
Sorry
you.
about that.
Um,
You tell the truth, but you definitely have a way of saying it. I'll say that. So I'm listening. So do you still feel like that?
absolutely. Donald Trump is an example of the old school with men and boys with boys. Donald Trump has love for mankind, for the world, right? And so that's why he's so upfront with you. And he's not into the color thing. He's not into it doesn't matter if you're male or female. He want what's right. And so he want the country to be America again. He want the country to be right. And so, but if you don't love what's right or you're not seeking what's right, you'll hear a man like Donald Trump and you will get angry. You'll reject the truth. But if you love what's right and seeking what's right, and you hear him being so frank about it, he won't be. He will not. You will not turn away from it. You will find the right way to go. But most people nowadays hate the truth, and they're very emotional, and emotions are evil, and so they don't want to hear the truth that come from Donald Trump, and that's why they're rejecting him. They rather hear a soft lie than to hear the hard truth because they're not ready for it.
No, completely. I agree with that. So the
Yeah.
people who support him though, do you feel like Kanye West is reputable and standing by him and standing for him? Because obviously you're conservative. You have conservative views. You believe in God, the nuclear family, and you always say beta, which is
Beta
my favorite
Bell.
slogan. So obviously, you're conservative. So, but is Kanye West just as reputable to you as Trump?
When you say reputable, what do you mean?
Do you respect his standpoint and his views?
Oh,
Um, you do.
no, I don't I don't agree with everything that he says, of course, but I respect the fact that he can say it because in America we have the freedom of speech. And even in growing up, we were taught to speak up. Just don't be angry, to speak up. And people are not going to always agree with it. And people have a right not to agree with it. But you do have a right to speak up. So I respect him for that because we got to hold on to the freedom of speech. Otherwise, this country is over if we get rid of that. We're not going to always agree, but we should always have the freedom of speech, no matter what.
Now, do you vote?
I do vote.
Are you
Absolutely.
Republican?
I am. I 32 years ago I became when God changed my heart from anger to love. I realized that and I used to be a Democrat. When I moved out here to California, I became a Democrat because that's what the black people were into at the time, and I was lost. And so, but when God changed my heart, I read the platform of the Democratic Party, and I realized the Democratic Party is anti-God, anti-family, anti-military, anti-black people. They hate black people. They don't love black people at all. And I didn't know that. They don't think blacks are capable. That's why they always cater to the blacks to keep them down to get the vote. And then I read the platform of the Republican Party at the time. It was about God, family, and country, Constitution. And so I asked God to forgive me. I'm like, God, you know what? You changed my heart from anger to love, and I definitely appreciate that. But I'm a Democrat, and I asked him, "Can you forgive me for being a Democrat?" He's like, "Yeah, don't worry." And so
Did you ask for forgiveness? You asked God for forgiveness for being a
I did.
Democrat.
I'm like, "I'm sorry, I'm a Democrat. Can you forgive me?" He's like, "Yeah, no problem, Jesse. Go ahead." And he forgave me, so I became a Republican. I do have to say though that the Republican platform is nothing like it was even 33 years ago. We have right over party now. We have a one party system. We do not have a two-party system. And so I hope that that would change and that men would run and men will work for the country instead of working against the country for their own selfish desires. You know what I mean?
No,
If you don't,
absolutely.
if you don't mind, I want to ask you just one question. If it's too personal, don't answer it. All right.
There's nothing too personal.
Um. So you say you have anger when your father. Did your father get married to another woman? Did you have like a stepmother or something?
My dad got married. He's been married 7 times.
Whoa! That remind me of that song. I'm getting married for the, uh, huh? I've been married to this ain't woman. I've been married 7 times before, and every time. But your father, no wonder you're angry. Forgive your father for that, because one of the worst things that can happen to children is for a father or a mother to bring in a step parent. Kids hate that because they yearn for their natural parents, especially the father, and they cannot and will not accept a substitute because it doesn't fill that void in life. And then when their fathers and the mothers do that, they're trying to get love from the step parent, and you feel left out even more so. So
Now, I'll
forgive
tell you,
your
my
father for doing
dad,
that.
and not to interrupt you, but my dad, he grew up Jehovah's Witness. His dad, when he died when he was 17 years old, and he was raised by my grandmother. Now, my grandmother was a devout Jehovah's Witness. And my dad, when my grandfather died, decided that he didn't want to be a Jehovah's Witness at the time. He was 17 years old. And so he left home, but my grandmother shunned him and would
Yeah.
only speak to him when he were reinstated. But he'd been disfellowshipped a total of 3 times. You're thinking 7 women, so somewhere in there he was having unprotected, intercourse. So he's gotten disfellowshipped, and each time my grandmother would not speak to him. And
Whoa.
to this day, and it's crazy because over the last year, my grandmother lost her son and a daughter. She had a total of 4 kids. Now there's only 2 living. the two that are the most distant from each other, right?
Right.
And so you can see the aftermath of how my grandmother raised them. So my issues aren't with my mother or my father. It's with my grandmothers
Yeah.
and not men, so to speak. And as you can see, it's certain things that come with that,
Yeah.
and I'm very well aware of it, emotionally, the way you feel. And sometimes you feel like you cannot trust women when you grow up in that situation, just like women who would feel like they couldn't trust men if they
Yeah.
grew up the other way.
Yeah.
But I definitely can say that it impacts you. It's impactful. And if you don't treat it, and I want to say treat it because we're not, diagnosing right now, but if you don't concede that it is an issue, you will find yourself in a position where you may need treatment.
Have you gone and forgiven your grandmother for that?
No,
Why
not yet.
not? Why not?
I've not forgiven her because it still hurts. And it
But
still
that's a,
hurts because the relationship with my dad and we have a good relationship on the terms that I understand who he is.
right.
I understand why he's like that. And I feel for him. And I'm trying to decide if what I feel for him is more of a pity or if it's more of an acceptance. And until I can understand if I feel pity for him or accepting him because I relate to what he's gone through, but from a different perspective, only then can I heal and truly forgive my grandmother.
Well, the problem with that is because it's a spiritual thing,
Mhm.
and these emotions that you're having is coming from anger, coming from hate.
Yeah.
And until you forgive your grandmother, go to her, realize she couldn't help herself. Her mother screwed her up as well. And hey, grandma, you messed with my father, you did this or whatever. And I realize now you can help it. I'm sorry for resenting you. I realize you couldn't help it. Just as you can't help but have those emotions that you're having due to the anger. When you forgive your grandmother, realizing that she couldn't help it, then God would take that spirit away from you of darkness and you will heal. Your spirit, your soul will heal
Mhm.
because it's not the body, it's the soul that need healing. And only the soul can be healed with love, which is the love of God. And so you can't be healed and then go and forgive. You got to forgive and then be healed. And when people,
Mm.
I'm not a doctor, so I'm not
Me
doing
too.
medical diagnosis. But when you have anger, which is hatred, it destroys every fiber in the body, your
Mm.
blood cells, your heart, your it brings on cancer and all kinds of things because it's all darkness. It's the nature of the devil. But when you go and forgive, then the light will come and take away the darkness, and the light will heal not only the spirit, but the body, the physical body as well, by destroying the ego nature, which is not you, it's the nature of the devil. All emotions like that are from the devil. When you feel good, that's the nature of the devil. When you feel bad, that's the nature of the devil. So, but the light of God will take that away from you, and you'll be free not only spiritually but physically as well.
Mm.
So I recommend do what you want, of course, but I recommend you go and face grandma and forgive her. She cannot help herself. Her mother did it to her.
No, that's the hardest thing right there. And I love the fact that you said that. I mean, get ready, get out here in a second. But the thing of it is that you say that, and I have to forgive her genuinely, like you said, before I can even speak with her, because
Yes.
they're Jehovah's Witnesses, and I'm not a Jehovah's Witness any longer. So that means that they're not gonna speak to me either.
Oh, they won't?
No, I'm Sean. I'm not a
Oh,
Jehovah's Witness. Everybody that I grew up with, everyone that I knew coming up as a child, I no longer associate with me because I'm not a Jehovah's Witness. So it's like having your whole, everything swiped out from up under you, so to speak.
yeah,
So I've had to deal with that and build myself up because that was to me, going into 18, 19, that was damning to me.
I bet.
I'm out here in the world, I'm experiencing new things. And it's like everybody I knew, including family, I can't talk to because I'm bad association. And so with that being said, I have to forgive her. You're right. But
Yeah,
I
well,
have to do it on my own with
yes,
God's help, of course.
since you know that you can't see her, she won't allow it. Just realize that she couldn't help herself.
I do.
If she could have done better, she would have. Her mother did it to her, and her mother did it to her, and it's just being passed down, right? And just realize she couldn't help it, And then God would take that angry spirit away from you and he will set you free. It's going to be amazing. But just realize she can help it. Why why would the people accept a religion that says that you can't even be with your family if you don't agree with them? How did that happen?
Well, there's a scripture in the Bible that said in 1 Corinthians that said bad association spoils useful habits. And that is a scripture that has been plowed into my head over and over again. When I was a kid and I got into trouble, I literally had to stay in my room for months. And I was homeschooled at a portion. So staying in my room as a punishment meant nothing. Like I already couldn't play with kids outside of the congregation, period. Couldn't talk, couldn't do anything, but I went to public school. So it's just that one scripture that says all bad association spoils useful habits.
What a mess.
Yeah.
I've counseled over the years, I've counseled with many ex-Jehovah's Witnesses as well. And I know what happens to them. But when they forgive, they go free and then they're fine. They understand that the people can't see the parents and whomever. But they go free and they are able to overcome not having to be with their families and things like that, because once you forgive, nothing will be missing. You won't have a longing for anything because you will return to the Father. You will return to God. So just forgive her, and it would be as though you would never know loneliness again. You would never know fear. You would never know doubt and worry. All that stuff would disappear once you forgive grandma. And then whatever little weakness you may hold against your father, may or may not, just don't hold them against him, and you will be free. But you must forgive. They couldn't help it.
And I received that. Now I'm going to go ahead and get up out of here, guys. I want to tell you something. My name is Sandy Blooms, and you have been watching the JLP show and the Sandy Bloom show merged together. That's amazing. Let me get you say beta. Let me get you say beta one time before we get out of here. I got
beta. Don't be a beta male.